Right now the goal for our application is to be able to create, read, update and delete a customer. So what I want to start out with is actually adding the functionality down here. But to make it right, I'm going to add a facade and a service down here so that we can communicate. So imagine this, the UI calls the facade and says, I want to create a user right here. Now the facade says, dear service, do you know how to create a user? And the service says, yes, I've made a unit of work that can actually create a user. So I call that unit of work will call the repository down here, and the repository will then do whatever it has to do to create the user and maybe even send a message back. There we are, we're done. So what we want to do this lesson is we want to make two things. We want to add the facade so we can start actually providing an access point to the services inside the BLL layer, and then we want to add our first service, which is going to be a customer service. The facade will be a plain class and the service will be an interface. So let's do it. Let's go into the customer app BLL layer and add two classes. Again, the first item is going to be a simple class. Let's call it facade. Let's actually call it BLL facade, and let's just put in capitalized letters like this, BLL facade. So that's just kind of representing the access point for our business logic layer. And remember to make this public, very important, because I need to access it from another package. I want to access it from the UI, and that's why it needs to be public. The second thing I want in here right away was the service, and we're going to add a normal service for now. We are not going to use generic services yet. Get back to that later. But we'll add a service here, and that service will start out with an I for interface. That's kind of how the .NET C# language encourages to write your interfaces. And then I'll call it customer service. That's kind of what my interface wants to contain, like this. Now the customer service also needs to be public right now. That's kind of what we have to explain, because we also want to access this from the app UI. But that's all that needs to be public available. The rest of the files that I'll build in here for now to actually work with the customers, create, read, update and delete, will not be public. They will all be hidden behind internal access modifiers, or those that are lower than that. So these are the only ones we need to make public. We want to again make the architecture as clean as possible. We only want people who have access to these two to actually be able to change stuff in the UI, to make this layer the only access point to figure out how to work with the unit of work and stuff like that. So interfaces are ready, the facade is ready, we've made these two classes available. Next we'll start populating it so that we can actually create, we can read, we can update, and we can delete customers. So let's do that in the next lesson. See you next time.